Man, it's really awesome to be doing this kind of thing with you guys here tonight. Um, I think something that sticks out to me, I'm just going to start off by a brief introduction. I think you might know kind of where I'm coming from, but it could help. I'll just give a little introduction and then share a little bit about the story that I wrote about on the blog yesterday. And then I want to leave a lot of time for Q&A or just kind of discussion between us, some dialogue here. Um, cool. So yeah, my name is Cam Lee Small. I was transracially adopted from Korea at the age of 3.5. Um, my heart right now for the adoption and permanency community is to just walk with people, listen to stories, provide pieces of my own story to strengthen people, to give people hope. Um, Not that I have all the answers because we're all learning together, but I think part of my calling is just to figure out what is it that I wish I had as an adoptee, what is it that parents need right now in the community, and how can we connect? What can I do to serve you all? Right now, I serve as a licensed clinical professional counselor in the Twin Cities metro area. I do individual, group, family therapy, different forms of counseling. And I'll speak a little bit about that, what counseling means and therapy means and licensure and everything. But that's just where I'm at right now. And hello, welcome to everyone who's joining right now. So that's where I'm at right now. And today is about my birth search and walking you through my personal experience searching for my birth family and what it was like to be in Korea and go through that whole process. Something that stuck out to me as I was preparing for this and just thinking about the Kindred community is their mission statement is something like honoring and giving space to the brokenness and the beauty of adoption and hearing the different stories and providing a platform, kind of like a holding environment for all of the different perspectives. And I really appreciate that because it says that wherever you're coming from, you are welcome here. And that's something that really resonates with me, that everyone is welcome here. I'm just thinking about, I don't know why this just happened. I just thought about the Backstreet Boys song, like, wherever you, I don't even remember the name of the song, but wherever you're from, whatever, you're welcome here. And that's awesome because that's what connection means for us, that we're going to be here together. Everyone's story is unique to them, and it's important and it's unique to you, but there are some commonalities that I wonder if we can maybe connect on tonight as I share some of my story. Cool. Wow. Okay. Awesome to see you all. So yesterday I posted a blog entry called Navigating Loss on a Journey Toward Hope. And what that meant was that in my personal adoption story, I had to process different kinds of loss in different seasons of my life. And I had guidance and support and help along the way. And my hope is to share some of that. So what was the prompt to search for my birth mom? That was one of the questions that I heard recently. What prompted me to search? So in the blog yesterday, I talked about my supervisor. I was working at this electronic retail space, and my supervisor, it was like his first day on the job, and he came up to me and we started talking about adoption. He started sharing about his adoption story and his experience. And I can say that I was intrigued. He was talking about going on air in Korea, making a video, and having it online or on air, like introducing himself, his name, and hoping that his mom would see it so that he could reconnect with his family. And before that time, I never really intentionally thought about that. Even I didn't even know that really existed, that you could do that, or that was a thing, or why someone would want to do that. So I was intrigued. And then, as I wrote, I think a few weeks later, I went to my parents' house and just asked, hey, do you guys have any of my adoption information? I'm kind of interested in starting a birth search. And I'll pause here because another question that came up was something like, what did your parents do to help you in your process, in your birth search process? So here's like a first milestone. They were super upfront. They were very transparent. They came into that situation and centered it, or they were sensitive to my needs. They helped make it about me. And I'm saying that cautiously, but what I mean is that whatever they may have felt inside, I think they were able to manage that and keep the focus on my request for my information. And it was a super chill kind of interaction, kind of like, hey, do you have these papers? And they were able to provide them for me. And I think it's okay if you're a caregiver and like a family member asks you for adoption information or birth history or any kind of documentation. It's okay if you have feelings that come up for you. That's totally okay. So I want to just make sure that I give space for that and not demonize you because you felt bad or defensive. I will say though that we can manage those feelings and then use them later for self-reflection. Why did I feel defensive? What was that about for me? What does it mean that my child or family member wants to search for this part of their story? And how can I maybe explore what's going on for me and be a supporter for them and cheer for them in their own way? So you can use that for self-reflection, and that's awesome. So they gave me that information, and then I kind of started sending some emails back and forth to different people. One thing that I didn't share in the blog is other events or people that were introduced kind of like randomly. So I was working at that retail store, and a customer came in and said, hey, do you know how to speak Korean? Or yeah. And I said, no, I don't. And that was one of those very common experiences where maybe someone engages me and initiates a conversation in a language that is not English. And this was kind of one of those situations. And she offered to teach me. She said, I can teach you. And that's just like a boiled down version of that moment. But we started meeting, and she started giving me Korean lessons at Barnes & Noble. And that was like once a week. She had a lesson plan for me and would meet with me for free for an hour. And I was, again, just kind of building on that initial inspiration, like what is this? So that's that. And then this is happening about the same time that I'm kind of connecting or plugging into this local church community that is predominantly like Asian American, and figuring out that piece of it all, kind of like spiritual identity, racial identity, what is my story as an adoptee, all of that. So the reason I want to give you this background is because for me, it helped put the pieces together when I was in Korea, planning to meet my birth mom, and all of a sudden I get a message that she changed her mind. And during that moment, I think like all of these other layers of prior experiences came into play, as well as like other things. So I was in Korea, planning to meet my birth mom. I'm kind of like fast forwarding here. And it changed abruptly. So she said, no, I don't want to meet you. And it was a burden and a feeling of dread and just a very kind of regretful tone. And I kind of wrote yesterday that it took me a couple days, but I started crying a lot. I felt so much depth of emotion that it's hard to describe. But it's almost like the second loss. So there's these different layers of loss, but I feel like in that space, there was almost like a highlight of a loss of control, loss of kind of continuity, where I already know that earlier on in my story, there's these like 3.5, 4 years that I don't really know about. And hey, what's up, everyone? Just joining. Just wanted to say hi to you. I see you. Awesome. Welcome. So I got to Korea. Mom changes her mind, and I'm feeling all of these different feelings. And I was talking about kind of like that second lost. So twice sadness almost kind of thing. And I won't spend too much time lingering on that, but the main point is that it changed. And for the next few days, I was very down, very dark thoughts, very fearful and angry, bitter, confused, all of these different feelings. And if you get a chance, there's a book called You Weren't With Me by Chandra Ghosh Ipen, and it's spelled like Chandra. Hey, Krista. And they read a book. She writes this book with her partner, spouse, husband, and the husband, I think, like illustrates the book. But it's like this bunny, this, like young bunny is looking for the older bunny, and the whole idea is that we kind of get brought into the story of what goes on in our bodies when there's this loss. And when I read that, I was so struck by how accurate it kind of named my feelings, where there was this kind of like missing or yearning or a longing for life that once was, wondering where were you, why weren't you there, and all of those pieces. So the next 3 days were really tough, long story short. How did I get through that? In the blog, I shared that a few years earlier, I had connected with multiple adoption communities, and I think at that point, I was able to reach out to them, and they were kind of like tracking along with me in my birth search process in Korea, and I was able to kind of text back and forth with them and kind of just share what I was going through. Of course, the spiritual component was a big piece for me personally, and trying to figure out what is it in my story that I've not been able to control, and then how can I respond to that? How can I take ownership for my role in my story? How can I acknowledge that there were things, decisions made earlier on in my life that impacted me lifelong, but then how can I become an active participant in my life moving forward? So I think for me, that was a pivot point. Mom doesn't want to meet me anymore, super full of lots of real, valid feelings, and then making a decision about what I want to do from here moving forward. So it took a few days to make that decision, to have kind of receive a feeling of peace that, hey, I can't control this. I can't control birth mom. I can't control the way the situation is happening. So what can I do now? So I journaled a lot, and I was still, I think, scheduled to be in Korea for another week and a half or 2 weeks. And I kind of came to a space of kind of freedom from that. And if you have been able to kind of like follow along on my posts, I just share that I think I went into Korea placing a lot of value, almost a lot of responsibility on just going after whatever it was that I thought that my birth mom could provide for me if we did meet. But I think that kind of that change in plans was able to kind of dismantle that that need or that desire. And I'm not saying it's wrong to have that desire. I'm just saying that for me, I think I wanted it so much that it started to impact my emotions in kind of like a almost like too much. And again, I'm not saying that that's bad if someone's emotions are impacted a lot. So after 3 or 4 days, the adoption agency called back, and they said, "Oh, your mom changed her mind. She wants to meet you." So I was so surprised, so many different feelings, like, what? Oh my gosh, this is just so wild. It's like a roller coaster. First, she wants to meet me, then she doesn't want to meet me, and now what are we going to do? Is she going to cancel again? What is this going to be like? So they gave me a date and time to meet, and I had a friend that I had met at one of the adoptee camps that I worked at that was there to translate for me during the meeting. So we met, and I'm just going to kind of wrap up here because I want to give you guys time to ask questions about all this. We met and we were able to catch up, I guess, in a way. It's really hard to describe this, but we met and we went to dinner and we had just lots of food together, and my mom was asking so many questions about my birth, or about my adoptive family, about how I was raised. One huge major theme was she constantly apologized. She kept saying, "I'm so sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." And I think what I was holding in that space, because of the previous 3 days of kind of like loss and me processing that, was that I knew that I wanted to go into that situation to bless this woman. This woman has gone through so much suffering in her life, as I learned, and I felt so compelled that, yeah, I mean, this is really tough for me, but the pivot point was like, what is she going through right now? Like, what on earth would compel a birth mom to like invite her birth son to Korea and then cancel and then reconnect again? So I have no clue what she's going through, but I want to be sensitive to that. So a lot of it was affirming her and helping her know that it's okay, and I'm so glad we're here right now. We're here right now. Let's be here, and I want to answer all your questions. I've got some questions too, but I kind of was able to center it on how can I meet her needs right now, because she has a lot of needs. I don't want to share too much of her story because it's her story, right? But I will say that I was pleased and surprised and even just really curious to find out that there are other family members involved that I would love to meet someday at their pace when they're ready. And I think if you followed along with me last year, November 2018, I asked if they'd like to meet again, and they're not ready right now, and that's totally cool. So that's where I'll pause right now, just making kind of like the nutshell of the kind of the anticipation going to meet mom, and then the disappointment when she changed her mind, and then kind of the halfway closure that I received when we did finally meet, and then I'll share a little bit more. But does anyone have any questions up to this point right now? Anything stick out to you that you want me to kind of revisit or circle back to? So that meeting was the first meeting that happened in Seoul, and she lives in Busan, which is like maybe 3 hours away drive, I guess. So our plan was to meet one more time in a couple days in Busan. I would take the bullet train and meet her there. So I did that, and just another meeting, and I was able to meet my aunt, and in that first meeting I was also able to meet my birth uncle, and he's the one who kind of actually like arranged the meeting and kind of spurred my mom on to go through with it with me. One thing that I just remembered that was kind of just an interesting part of this story is that they invited me, the first meeting they invited me back to the hotel, like a hotel that they were staying at. So they're in Busan, they stayed at a hotel in Seoul. And my mom asked me for this one request, that when we sleep, I would sleep next to her. And I don't know if I ever told anyone this, but so I didn't know how to respond. I just said, sure. I really didn't sleep much that night, and my uncle was there in the bed next to us, and he was snoring so loud, and I also snore loud. So I just wonder if that's part of the family thing. So it's just a kind of an interesting thing. I'm like, wow, you snore, I snore, we're like family and we're sleeping together. So that second meeting happened. Now I want to share just a little bit about like posts like after this. So like literally the next day when I got back to Seoul, I was meeting up with a bunch of other friends that I knew there. They are teaching at Hagwons, like teaching English at schools. And I was standing outside, and this one teacher, we started talking, and she's also placed for adoption at an early age. And she told me that she'd been searching for her father for 10 years and has done DNA samples, hired detectives and organizations. And she said something that I'll never forget. She said, yeah, when I find him, everything will be good. Like, it'll all make sense. And in my mind, like, as I heard that, I'm coming from like just meeting my birth family, and I still had so many questions, so many kind of like unresolved layers happening inside me. And that was for me though. And I think what that meant is that as I choose to walk with other people wherever they are in their birth search journey, I want to acknowledge that everyone's going to approach this with a different set of desires, a different set of expectations, and then also a different way that they handle disappointments or cope with joy and sorrow. So I felt like inside my mind I was thinking like, man, I kind of thought that too, but I'm still holding a lot of things inside me, and I wonder what it would be like for someone to know that, you know, sometimes it does reconcile everything, but sometimes it doesn't, and both are okay. I think providing awareness that there's so many different ways to go into these situations and so many ways to experience them that are okay, and what does support look like during all of those experiences. Someone asked, did your birth mom share stories of you when you were little? Yeah, she did, and that was really complicated for me to hear. It was sad for me to hear and joyful for me to hear, especially because my birth father died when I was 2 years old or 3 years old. So as she was sharing with me about those earlier days, I could tell that she was also dipping into another form of loss in her life. So I kind of listened to those stories with like a sense of heaviness in my heart, but also gratitude. Like, wow, I'm hearing about what I was like when I was young. She said that she used to grab me by the arms and spin me around. That was so fun, and take me to other family members, and they remembered me. Some of them remembered me. Others haven't heard about me, and that was another piece of it too, that she hadn't told everyone. So I think the account of what happened in the past was bittersweet for her to share. But yeah, she shared lots of stories, and that was really cool to hear. Another person asks, do you continue to regularly meet up and see one another? We don't. I would like to. I would love for her and other family members to meet other members of my family, and I would love to meet other members of her family, our family together. I've initiated more meetups after those first two initial meetings in 2012, but they have declined. They have chosen to decline, and I'm kind of in a holding pattern for right now. What has been the most difficult part of your adoption journey as an adoptee? That's a really good question. It's hard to rank the difficulty or the seasons of difficulty, or organize them. There are particular difficulties related to the what ifs, and I'm just going to reach back into that moment that was really tough for me, kind of like one of the hardest moments as an adult adoptee, when I first found out that my mom changed her mind. And it was the what ifs. Like, I could have grown up in Korea. I could have had all of this language. I could have been a part of this culture that relates to my external appearance. I could be able to speak with the cab driver, with a taxi. I could understand the whole bowing thing, just all of those things. Like, what if? Would I be smarter? Would I have different friends? Would I know different things? What would my life be like? And almost, I'm going to say this in very cautiously too, like, why did it get taken away from me? Like I should have had this. So I want to be really careful when we say the words like should, like I should do this, I should be a better person, I should be XYZ, but like I should have had this, I should have grown up here, why was it taken away from me? That was really difficult for me to navigate. And it took time and like honest self-reflection to kind of tease that out, of what that pointed to. So that was tough, and I think it's not uncommon, that idea of like, what if I would have grown up there? What would my life be like? Do you feel like your parents gave you a safe space growing up to navigate those feelings, or was there anything they could have done more or better? Okay, and then another question says, shed some light, or yeah, just shedding light on my now young adult South Korean adopted kids are feeling. Okay. My parents, I love my parents, Roger and Nan. My parents are and have been doing like the best that they can, and I know that. They sacrificed a lot. They served me in so many different ways. They actively tried to like ask me questions, I think. I think the space, if I were to describe the space, I think it was safe. I don't feel like I could have asked for my adoption information unless it felt safe. So I think they did create a safe space, and that was that's a function of just kind of like our relationship. I think they could have done more. What's so complicated about parenting is like, how much do you push for things, or how much do you like give space for exploration? But I think, in my opinion, they could have lived in a different city. But I understand why they chose this city. They had a family there. Like, it was central Wisconsin, and I appreciate central Wisconsin, and I've got great friends there. And I think they could have maybe looked into a diverse community, whatever that could have meant to them back then in the 80s. But I think it's something that it might have been helpful growing up to process those different feelings of just navigate birth search and identity. And I think what I remember is they were always able to talk about adoption. Like, yes, you were adopted, and I have these pictures, this photo album that I loved to go through. I remember going through this photo album, and I'm just so thankful that they kept those pictures. That is incredible that they made that like a norm, that on this shelf there's you and how much we value you and prize you and kind of stuff like that, and just allowing me to look at it whenever I wanted to. That was incredible. So yes, they did everything they could to make it a safe space, and I think they did the best with what they were given at the time. And also, just to give a little context about how I'm sharing tonight, I think okay, Krista asked, what are some ways your wife has supported you in this process? That's an awesome question too. So as I'm sharing this, even this question about marriage and spouse relationships, that I'm sharing kind of just from kind of like a raw personal perspective, I think in another space, it will be important for me to share from like a clinical perspective. And I value that. But I think for tonight, I mean, just like with y'all, I just want to share kind of like from the heart of what that was like for me, because I tend to like over intellectualize things. So in order to sort of just give you what's coming up for me, I kind of trended more towards the more just casual language, just to give some context. But my wife has supported me. So I met my wife in the local church community that I talked about earlier that I was kind of a part of. And at that point, I just want to make sure I get this next question here. So are you going to tell your kids everything or curate and wait until they're adults? Okay. So my spouse helps me by allowing me to explore all these adoption things like right now. She has been able to, so I'll provide a little bit of context without getting overly spiritual. That like before we married, we had kind of like the DTR, kind of defining the relationship kind of thing, like who are you, what are your expectations, what do you see for your life, what are your goals kind of thing. And it was put out there from the first season that adoption and supporting the adoption community is a really important piece of my life. And I think that was helpful to know. What does that look like further on in our marriage? I don't know, but we both know that this is something that is a core component to my story. So when we're kind of like agreeing to move forward toward marriage and then like marrying each other, we have this sort of expectation of like, what does our union look like as a couple? Like, how is our relationship a vehicle to serve people, to serve communities? My wife serves the international student community, and other spaces that are important to her, so I'm supporting her in that as well. So for her, it's about saying that, okay, there's only a certain amount of time, hours in a day, and like right now we work together to figure out how can I support Cam in the way that he, like even tonight, just, you know, like doing this, the Instagram social media piece, and then eventually going out into the community, meeting with people, seeing clients, and being okay with that because we view our life as, I'll use the term very loosely, as like a ministry or like a caring for other people that we want to extend to others. Not in a like martyr, self-sacrifice, we're so awesome sort of way, but just a way of like, okay, this is our personal life experience. It's the lot that we've been given. How can we use this to connect to the needs in our community? So I think we both are learning how to serve each other in that way, and it's kind of like an ongoing process, and it's kind of a quick answer in a nutshell. But that's an awesome question. So important in partnerships to figure out how to support each other. I am going to tell my kids everything, or wait until they're adults. Yeah, you know, I think as I imagine what life will be like as we continue growing in this sort of like service to the community and our involvement in the community, I think it's going to be a natural thing for our children to see us working or serving or connecting with people, having people over, going out to community events as the norm, as this is life. This is kind of what we do. It's normal to like help other people, and it's normal to listen to each other in the family and to have space for emotions, and it's normal to talk about, kind of bring them along into these kind of areas, kind of as a way to like kind of inspire them. I'm hooking up a battery because my battery is low. I can't remember. I think there's a, yeah, just this idea. If I wanted my children to enjoy hamburgers kind of thing, like I could talk about it and I could let them taste it. So I want them to see what it's like to use part of your story to serve other people. So I will definitely tell them. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to tell them or like how much, but I want them to know that it's a normal thing to talk about all of these things in a safe space at home, almost creating that environment together as we go along. I am going to be offering a parent/caregiver workshop online virtually for the fall 2019 season. So this group will meet for 12 weeks, bi-weekly. So that means like every other week we'll meet in person through Zoom video conferencing software. And then in the weeks in between, there will be like little projects and modules that we can do together. Go to the website and check it out for more information. Let me know if you have questions. But I have gotten a lot of emails and questions about therapy and counseling and adoption in general. And I think this is a way to maybe bring us together and talk more about that and provide support for you all from the clinical perspective. So tonight I'm kind of talking from personal perspective, but from kind of like a medically, clinically centered lens, along with the personal lens together in a space that is intentional and helpful, so that you can have more resources and connection. So go to my website and check that out, and let me know if you have questions. So I am going to end now and say thank you, guys, like caregivers, moms and dads, parents. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing, for the way that you're serving your family, yourself. I think that takes a lot of courage, a lot of risk, and time sacrifice. Like you just spent like 45 minutes, an hour with me, or 5-10 minutes, whatever. You connected with me, and that's a step, and it just shows what your commitment level is, and that's incredible. So thank you all, and I will see you soon. Keep checking back at Therapy Redeemed and Kindred for awesome updates and insights, and goodbye.